Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. The race for the leadership of the National Assembly is getting more interesting and intense. During the week, 2 more members declared interest to take over from Femi Gbajabiamila, while more senators have also shown interest in the seat. With the inauguration of the 10th Assembly drawing closer by the day, the debate of whether the party should be the deciding factor of where the pendulum swings or the lawmakers should be allowed to pick their own leaders are getting more interesting.
Well, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, Deputy Dean, School of Postgraduate Studies, Beige University, joins us to take a look at, of course, this ongoing debate about the leadership of the 10th House of Representatives, as well as the Senate, just the National Assembly in general. Yeah. Thank you again for being here. All right, so before we go into all of, the speculations, especially coming from the ruling All Progressives Congress, their governors, and even their NWC, which had a meeting during the course of the week, let's talk about the fact that till now, we still don't know exactly where the party intends to zone the leadership of, both houses. Why is it taking it so long is the question Nigerians, are asking at the moment.
Oh, well, it will always be like that. It can be very, very complex, because it takes a lot of horse trading, a lot of negotiations, a lot of juggling and shuffling of interests, and do not forget the interests that are contending are actually multiple. And if you do not get your acts together, if you do not put it properly at the level of the party, you might just see some surprises springing up on the floor of the House, on the day of election, as the case could be. So I think the leadership are just trying to be a little more circumspect, to take their time, to be much more consultative, deliberative, and to make sure that they are all on the same page, remembering that very much unlike before, in the case of the race for the 14th Speaker of the House of Representatives, we're having more minority parties coming up, and they can be a force that you may not be able to discountenance if you're not well prepared, even though APC in the majority. And the case is not too different from the Senate, although slightly different, but of course, we cannot rule out the fact that it can be some surprise, if they get some splinter vote from the majority party, the APC, adding up to the minority, there might be some surprise too. But most importantly, there are some factors that actually determine who wins at the end of the day. One, it's party leadership, the preference of the hierarchy, and sometimes represented in the president or the president-elect, as the case could be, and of course, there is a factor of the candidate themselves, the kind of influence they wield. Some of them, like we always say, like we sometimes say, have huge war chests. They've got the influence, they've got, they are very magisterial in their approach and can leverage on their heavy characteristical machine, to pull things through. Then what about the other one that we often allege, things changing hands, whether at the level of cash or kind, or promises for future, in the future, for some kind of chairmanship position, House committee leadership, So all these things, it's a complicated jigsaw, and you have to ensure that all the pieces are well fit. And even when you think that you have fitted them properly, they can still build some disorganization. It can still be disaggregated, causing confusion, resulting in something you didn't actually plan. Do not forget that politics around us, like everywhere else, but around us, particularly the National Assembly, is extremely fluid. And like we say, you may decide something today, in the next hour it has changed. And so you just have to keep going. Even those of them that will think in the front, are front runners now, you can't be too sure that on that day, something will not change before then, So discussions continue, and that's why we are seeing this back and forth. That's why, like Amaka said, we can't really place our hand on it. It's looking as if they are confused, but of course it is what it is.
Interesting. It's looking as if they're confused, but it is what it is. Yeah. I was telling Amaka the other time, before you came on, that I particularly find the politics and the politicking of the leadership of the emergence of the leadership of the National Assembly more interesting than the General Assembly, the general elections, rather, because it looks a little more systematic and calculated than the general elections. Now, let's look at what the relationship should be between the executive and the legislature, the executive-legislature relationship. What are you looking at?
Well, in my own opinion, I think they are just a coordinate arm of government, which means that they're supposed to they complement each other. They are the same government, but coordinate because the approach to governance is different. They are supposed to dissect issues. It's an intellectual arm, break down issues, prepare policies, policy documents through the instrumentality of regulation for the executive to implement. And of course, where the extension, the judiciary comes in. So it's a trinity that hallmarks the ideal democracy. It should be one of cooperation, one of consensus building, compromise as again one, where one of confrontation. It should rather be one of dialogue all the time. The essence of dialogue is played up in the relationship between the three arms, particularly the executive and the legislature. But of course, in recent times, we have come to characterize candidates or leaders who have a good working relationship with the executive as being slavish. I don't think so. It shouldn't just be tension all the way. That's not what defines the relationship. It shouldn't be abuses, counter abuses, disagreement. It's not until they disagree before we say the legislature is good. And of course, do not forget, if you look at the history of this democracy, from 1999 to this time, there was less achievement in the first round of leaders that emerged, especially in the Senate, until we had Adeniyi, for instance. Then, of course, until we now had the Kanu Namani, where we had relative stability. But when Evans and or Kadibo were there, it was turbulent, because and the presidency seemed to be in disagreement with them. But in the case of Adeniyi, yes, Adeniyi had a smooth sail, as the case could be, because sometimes you disagree with the president, sometimes they agree. That's what I think it should be, not consistent disagreement or consistent agreement. It could be a ding-dong, a kind of back and forth, but the end of the day, it should be the same objective. Realizing that, when there's a government like this, the executive is supposed to implement, and of course, the executive is the embodiment through the presidency, the embodiment of that regime. Whatever the National Assembly achieves is going to be attributed to the executive, or to the president particularly. They'll be saying in the Obasanjo regime, in the Buhari regime, in the Jonathan regime, not in the Okadegbo regime, or the, what do you call it, or the Gbajabiamila regime. So, but the onus is often on the president, really, to be suave, to be smart, and have a good relationship with the legislature. That's what I think it is, really.
Absolutely. And of course, we cannot wish away the influence, really, the executive has over who becomes presiding officers in the National Assembly, especially when the party at the center, the governing party, actually still has majority, especially at the Senate. We cannot just wish that away. So we come back to, of course, I want to get your reaction to, of course, the stories in the last couple of days. First of all, we've seen the outgoing governor of Kano State, Ganduje, saying, what, the president-elect, the party, we've all decided, we're going with Senator Akpabio from Akwa Ibom State for Senate presidency, and of course, speaking about the speakership as well, and of course, even not forgetting that report attributed to the Guardian newspaper, where he says, the president-elect has opted also for Akpabio from the South, and of course, Tajuddin Abbas from the Northwest to become speaker. What do you make of all of this that we are seeing so far? And even though the party is yet to officially confirm this is where we're zoning it to, or who we're giving these positions to, what do you make of all of this intrigues with regards to who seem to be the anointed ones, as it stands?
It's very interesting. Do not forget, at the level of the president-elect, he will want to be subterranean, he will want to be subtle, he will not want to be openly supportive of a candidate. And of course, even if he's going to do it, he will do it through his trusted aides, through his trusted allies, like we see Governor Ganduje saying now, and of course, Governor Dave Umahizit, who said that he's stepping down because the president-elect has asked him to so do. That kind of politics, we may not be able to roll this out because individuals are still very strong, as against the institutions that produce them. So their opinion, their preferences will still matter, But our fear and our concern should just be that, when these individuals are encouraging some other individuals to emerge, it shouldn't just be because you think you can ride roughshod an important time of government through these individuals that you are choosing. You know, it should be the relationship is one of respectability, mutual respect, realizing that they are an arm that are supposed to checkmate you. You know, a kind of balancing, you know, balancing art. They're supposed to review some of your proposals in the interest of the people. And it's not a dictatorship. And democracy, in a democracy, the legislature is the springboard around which democracy revolves. It is the main definer of the democratic culture that we'll probably have. So you cannot toy with it. It shouldn't be an extension of the executive, as the case could be. You know, they're supposed to be assertive to some extent, independent-minded to a very great extent, even though we're not saying that they should be extreme at doing this, because it is one government that we're talking about. They're just a coordinate arm.
Thank you very much, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, for your time again on Newsnight tonight.